Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you on this significant occasion of World Environment Day 2024. My name is Nishtha and I work at the Maritime Research Center as the Communications and Advocacy Lead. As we gather here today for our webinar, it gives me immense pleasure to see such a diverse group of participants, all united by a shared commitment to the environment and our oceans. World Environment Day is a momentous occasion celebrated globally to encourage the awareness and action for protecting our environment. This year's theme, Ecosystem Restoration, resonates deeply with our mission at the Maritime Research Center. Our oceans, which cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface, play a very crucial role in regulating the climate, providing sustenance, and supporting a vast array of life forms. However, they are also facing unprecedented threats and challenges from activities like pollution, overfishing, climate change, and habitat destructions. Today's webinar aims to shed light on these pressing issues and explore innovative solutions for the restoration and sustainable management of maritime ecosystem. We are honored to have with us distinguished speakers and experts from various fields who will share their invaluable insights with all of us. As we embark on this journey today, let us remember that the health of our planet's ocean is intricately linked to our own well-being. Each one of us has a role to play, whether you are a researcher, a policymaker, an industry stakeholder, or an environmental advocate. Your insights are very invaluable to all of us. Thank you once again for joining us. Let us make the World Environment Day a turning point in our collective effort to restore and protect the incredible marine ecosystem that sustains the life on the planet. Welcome to the webinar, and I wish you a fruitful and enlightening experience ahead. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Commander Arnav Das, who is the founder and director of the Maritime Research Center and Neermani Technology, to give his introductory remark and discuss the UDA framework in the new global order.
Thank you, Nishtha. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the panelists. It is a very diverse group, and we are extremely grateful to all of you, sirs, and we have a lady as well, for joining us. I know you all are very, very busy, but we are very happy that it's a very diverse group, and you will see this as we go forward. People who are part of the industry, people who are part of decision-making, policy-making level, people, diplomats, and the whole array of people who will shape the way we deal with environment in the future. So I will give you a brief introduction to what is UDA and how we think we need to move ahead. So I'll be talking about the UDA framework for sustainable blue economy and effective climate change risk management. So I'll try and cover under these heads. Now, when you look at the 21st century new global order, the larger interactions today are happening in the tropical waters. And the tropical waters present a very unique characteristics, both politically, economically, and also from a physical aspect. The rich biodiversity presents a lot of opportunities, but then the way we are dealing with the region, there are a lot of concerns. The Indo-Pacific strategic space is often heard of, and we know the entire global community is now focusing on the Indo-Pacific, but by definition, the Indo-Pacific is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And what is important for us to understand is that the tropical waters behave in a very different manner, and we need to really understand the uniqueness of the tropical conditions. Now, any strategic perspective, we need to balance people, economy, and nature. When we talk about people, the coastal and the riverine communities or the native communities become very, very important. Often we see in the name of development, these communities or the people get marginalized, and they are normally not part of the larger development process, which creates a lot of discontentment and a lot of issues with them. And then there are also the traditional livelihood opportunities that are getting affected because of whatever the development process that we are trying to bring in. The second is, of course, economy. I mean, as Nishtha said, 70% of the earth is oceans. So the connectivity is a major issue, but how we deal with that aspect and what are the fallouts of that needs to be understood. And of course, now we are looking at the oceans for vast underwater resources. How do we manage it? Whether it is food security, whether it is energy security, whole lot of issues are there. And then, of course, what is important for today's discussion is the nature, climate change risk, sustainable blue economy, acoustic habitat degradation is something which is now slowly being recognized. Now, the challenges I want to just quickly list down. I don't want to go into the details. 75% of the earth is water. This includes the 5% of fresh water and including the ice cover. But the 90% of the threats and resources are in the underwater domain. I would like to say this a little bit more strongly because the underwater domain awareness needs to be given far more importance if we really want to manage the sustainability and the climate change risk in the planet. It is at present, my thought is that it is not getting the due importance. Then, as I mentioned, the tropical waters and the uniqueness has to be understood right from the policy intervention to technology intervention. Unless the tropical characteristics are not understood, we will not be able to drive it in a proper way. And of course, the post-Cold War era realities need to be understood. I mean, the technology development during the Cold War period, in the name of security, a lot of investment went into the technology development, of course, for the security purpose, which helped many other domains. But today, there is a change reality, and we need to understand that all the four stakeholders need to work together. Pooling of resources and synergy of effort is very, very important. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult for the global south to really be able to part of it. And holistic approach, as we'll see how the UDA framework actually drives a holistic approach. And the West versus the global south. I mean, this debate has to be done in a more nuanced manner. The massive blue economy push also needs to take into account the environmental impact. I mean, many times when we look at the environment impact assessment, it remains a lip service and many aspects do not get covered. I mean, one of the important aspects that I want to bring to your notice is the acoustic habitat degradation. We know the speed of sound in water is 5 times more than in air. So sound becomes the most critical factor below water. So if we do not take notice of the acoustic habitat degradation, the sustainability will become a very big issue. So, and we are increasingly now looking at the oceans for food security and energy security, but the sustainability aspect and the climate change aspect has to be given equal importance. The ESG and the SDG has to be given a UDA push. I mean, I don't see too much of discussion on the underwater domain awareness in both ESG discussions and even the SDG, just one or two of the, but I have written a paper where all the 17 SDGs can be addressed to the UDA framework. Now, coming more specifically to the Indian Ocean region, I mean, India's geostrategic location in the Indian Ocean is very well known, and we do expect India to play a major role. So here the capacity building will become a very, very important aspect. Let me quickly just remind you of, now we see the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific, great power rivalry is a major issue. How do we balance all these aspects? Sri Lanka and Maldives have gone through certain geopolitical issues, and it's well known to all of you. Regional forums are not driven by, I mean, whether it is IORA or BIMSTEC. I think UDA framework can really give answers to all the priorities that these forums, multilateral forums, have put forward. We are definitely discussing with the authorities, and now India will be taking over the IORA from next year, January. So I think there is a lot that the UDA can contribute in terms of meeting the agendas of these multilateral forums. The island nations, like I've been to Sri Lanka multiple times and I've been discussing with their authorities, these countries have become, in spite of being island nations, and Sri Lanka particularly has 7.8 times more sea area than land, but they still have a continental mindset, and they are not really being able to utilize their marine resources or the water resources to an extent that they should. And again, tropical characteristics are not really being given enough importance when we talk about policy. And of course, the capacity and capability building focus has to be towards the underwater space. Now, in India also, we have seen the Sagar visions. Then to support the Sagar vision, there have been announcements in terms of Sagar Mala, and these are mega projects. But I think the skilling or the capacity building has really not been able to recognize the specifics of the underwater space. Then transboundary river management is another big issue, and geopolitically, geostrategically, there's a lot of discussion. But I think UDA can give a lot of answers, and in this, climate change risk management becomes a very, very important issue. Then we've been talking about multimodal transport and supply chain. Here again, acoustic habitat degradation becomes very important. I mean, on the Ganga and the Brahmaputra, which are the national waterway number 1 and 2, the freshwater dolphins are a very, very unique species that are there, and they are endangered. And the inland water transport can have a very, very serious impact on the sustainability of these species. But I don't see, when we talk about environment impact assessment, these aspects are getting covered. And of course, the digital transformation uh, and the Atmanirbharta has to really look at the tropical characteristics, and because we are still running to the west for support in managing our tropical region. So this has to change. This is the framework that we talk about, the UDA framework. You can see the 4 stakeholders, whether it is strategic security, blue economy, sustainability and climate change, or even digital transformation. All of them may have their specific requirement, but the UDA framework can actually bind them together, and the acoustic capacity building and capability building will become the key. So if all of them can come together, pool in resources and synergize their effort, we will have answers to a lot of questions that we face today. And if you look at the vertical construct also, the sensing, analysis and policies, I mean, this gives a comprehensive, structured and inclusive approach. And all these smaller cubes within the larger cube can address the demographic challenge that we face. I mean, the employment or meaningful engagement can be addressed by looking at these smaller cubes, and probably each of those smaller cubes will become multiple more cubes, which will address those specific applications that we talk about. Marine spatial planning is nothing but the digital manifestation of the digital transformation. This is a spatio-temporal map that you see of underwater noise in the Indian Ocean. We are happy to inform that our paper was sent by the Government of India to the International Maritime Organization for underwater noise. And because of that, the Government of India has been nominated as a lead nation for managing underwater noise in the Indian Ocean. And now a task force is being formed under that to actually drive the underwater noise pollution issue due to shipping for the entire region. So probably we'll get an opportunity to contribute and support capacity building for all the 27 countries in the region. And MSP can be talked about in various other fields. I mean, so we have, as a team, we have built a massive MSP digital tool where multiple aspects, not just limited to the sustainability or climate change, even for resource availability or resource mapping, and also for the freshwater systems. And what we are in terms of MSP, as you know, is being driven by the Intergovernmental Ocean Commission of the UN, and the West has been pushing this. But what we bring to the table is the modeling and simulation approach, because the West is trying to say that you put sensors, but say even if we talk about the Indian EZ, we're talking about 3.7 million square kilometers. How many sensors can we put? So modeling and simulation is the best way to take it forward. I'll not go into too much details on this. And when we talk about digital transformation, we have categorized this into 3 broad categories. I mean, the manpower or the capacity building. First is the data, high-end data analytics. And given India's capability in this, I think we can be a real leader in driving this. The second would be, once the data is collected, the interpretation or the analysis will require domain specialists, which can be, we have such a large population, and we have a young aspirational youth who can really be part of this meaningful initiative. And the third is the field deployment specialist. So typically the coastal and the riverine community youngsters, youth can be actually taken into this, and they will be able to carry forward their traditional practices in helping us in sensor deployment and also in terms of sample collections in the water bodies. So I think as a way ahead, I would recommend MSP at a global level driven by the UDA, skilling at a regional level, research projects to support this, capacity and capability building, community engagement, and comprehensive and inclusive framework. How can we, as you saw the three categories, how can we take all the categories of people, whether it is high-end data analytics, whether it is domain specialist, or even the community people for the field work. So I would recommend an outreach, engage, sustain. Outreach is to sensitize everybody, then engage with them at multiple levels through internships, fellowships, and also engaging with the industry and stakeholders. And then to sustain it through very specific projects, whether it is policy intervention or technology intervention, we need to take it in a more sustained manner. And then looking at a center of excellence, which covers all the 5 pillars, that is research, incubation, skilling, academic courses, and also strategy center. So I think I would stop here and I'll hand it over back to Nishtha.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for your insights. Next, I would like to welcome the guest of honor of today's evening, Mr. Ganesh Natarajan. Mr. Ganesh Natarajan is the chairman of the Honeywell Automation and 5F World. The stage is all yours, sir. You can have it.
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you, Arnab, for inviting me to share some thoughts. I'll just be very brief. But, listening to what you said, that, India has been asked to lead in noise reduction, etc. It strikes me that there is so much we have to do, not so much in data and analytics, and of course, all that follows, but sheer intent. I think we still have an intent problem. We seem to be sitting pretty that we have to be net zero by 2070, and 2070 is certainly beyond my lifetime. So one would ask, why should we care? So I think it's important for us to sensitize people very early. I still remember I was speaking at the Asia Society in Tianjin, China. This is almost 15 years ago. And one of the new chief ministers, I will not name the state, she actually went up on the podium and said that, look, as far as I'm concerned, the next 30 development. After I develop my state, then I will start thinking about the environment. Now, I'm saying if we let such bravado statements pass, I think we are sending a message to young people that it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Somebody else will take care of it. So I think that's point number one. Point number two, you mentioned marine life. I remember I was in Bhopal speaking at the Bhopal Literary Festival, and one of the admirals from the Navy was there, and he was talking very proudly about the development we're going to do in Indira Point in Nicobar. I'm sure many of you know it, and that's one of those real beautiful areas. And interestingly, he talked about how we will develop it into a Phuket-like port city, and there'll be a military base, etc., etc. One young man from the audience got up and said, "Sir, have you ever heard about the leatherback turtle?" And there was a stunned silence about the leatherback turtle in the audience. And he actually went on to very graphically explain how the leatherback turtle is almost like a traffic cop to make sure the absolute lack of confidence. And we have to do everything possible to make that very well. Almost research, global research. If you look at what we're trying to do here, there are many, many startups in the sustainability space. And I think each one of us, when we met startups or we advise large corporations like Honeywell or anybody else, not just ESG reporting, it's not saying that, look, we have a sustainability agenda, and we know which of the SDGs to tick off, but to really say that, right from schools, which is an initiative we're doing in Pune with our former MP, Srimati Vandana Chavan, getting school children to get sense of climate change, etc., to corporates, to the social sector, is a huge initiative. Honestly, delighted with doing it in space. I completely agree that if we don't protect not only land animals but also marine species and the oceans, we are going to ask for trouble at some point of time. We see the impacts of climate change. So I wish you absolutely all and look forward to staying engaged with the initiative. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for sharing your insights with us. So moving on, the United Nations declared this decade as a decade of ocean sciences for sustainable development. And our next speaker happens to be from one of the arms of the United Nations, which is the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Now, let us all listen to the key message that our next speaker has for us on World Environment Day. The next speaker is Dr. Benno Boyer. Benno Boyer is the Chief of Natural Sciences at UNESCO New Delhi office. Since Mr. Boyer could not join us live today, He has very kindly shared a message with all of us. So I would request Mehul to share the recording and display it.
Dear Dr. Arnab Das, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting a message from UNESCO for your celebration of World Environment Day at the Maritime Research Center MRC in Pune. It gives me great pleasure to contribute this message on behalf of UNESCO. I wish you a good day to all delegates, specialists, participants and students present at the MRC on the 50th World Environment Day, which was first celebrated globally on the 5th of June in 1974. The host country this year is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the day will be celebrated globally with a thematic focus on land restoration, desertification and drought resilience. Because there is no water or nutrients available for plant life in deserts, this means the ecological primary productivity comes down to almost zero, further implying that there is almost no biomass to supply ecosystem components like the vertebrate and invertebrate fauna with food. Biodiversity loss in desert environments is frequently caused by human and livestock population dynamics that exceed the ecological carrying capacity. This means, in simpler words, that a certain area of desert can only support so many people, camels, goats, and so on. If this threshold is surpassed, irreversible damage will be done to the desert itself. The desert becomes even more of a desert. It becomes even less productive. Then it needs to be restored, and that is difficult and expensive. Therefore, vegetation cover, plant density and diversity are important. The ancient Arab pastoralists knew that. That is why they developed the Hema system, a traditional means by which tribal groups set aside part of their range that protected from grazing and from overgrazing, one of the oldest nature conservation systems that we know. These ancient people knew perfectly well how best to maintain their ecosystems based on their love and respect for their land and the life that it supports. Those of us who have ever experienced living in a desert environment do understand that we must take the greatest care of whatever little life is available. We will also take the greatest care of not being wasteful with the limited fresh water that is available, which is in deserts often brackish or even bitter in taste. In deserts, the few water wells that exist naturally must be maintained with hard labor. They are a lifeline for human living, frequently several meters deep below the surface, with highly limited recharge capacities. UNESCO has, since 1968, warned against the unbridled exploitation of natural resources and developed the World Network of Biosphere Reserves in 1971 as places to test, apply and demonstrate good environmental practices and people living in harmony with nature. Today there are 748 biosphere reserves in more than 130 countries globally. Moreover, UNESCO supports science and education into sustainable human living in a time when we are all exposed to the triple planetary crisis that is characterized by the adverse cumulative impact of biodiversity loss, climate change and pollution. Demystifying one of the misconceptions that we usually have, climate is not just simply the weather. Climate change is the long-term change of atmospheric conditions of our planet, influenced by its chemical and physical parameters and connected to the biosphere, which is the living part of the planet, the cryosphere, which is the ice, the hydrosphere, which is the water, and all of the pedosphere as well, which is the soil. The climate is changing. It has always been changing due to the sun's own dynamics, due to changes in the atmosphere, inconsistencies in the Earth orbit around the sun, due to magnetic shifts in the Earth axis and the associated shifts in the poles, as well as due to meteorite impacts and massive volcanic eruptions. For some time now, however, 2 new additional factors have been added. Number 1, the widespread deforestation and burning of large areas of forests, which is already going on since 2000 years. The massive burning of fossil fuels and the associated emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. Currently, due to human influence, climate change happens faster than normal, and this is dangerous. It has negative impact on water, energy and food security, as well as human and environmental health. In addition to climate change mitigation efforts, education is an essential element for humanity to be able to deal with climate change globally and locally. If we don't understand climate change and its causes and effects, then we won't be able to react to it in a sensible way. All of us need to understand the basics in climate change, including students and decision makers. UNESCO has produced, in partnership with 10 United Nations agencies, a self-explanatory exhibition called Climate Science Literacy. These materials have been produced in many languages, such as, for example, Chinese, English, German, Spanish, and Thai, as well as already in 7 Indian languages. Currently, we are installing these materials as permanent exhibitions in Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, the Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. It is important that every person participates and becomes an environmental steward. It is with this in mind that I encourage everybody to think about how you can participate in thinking globally and acting locally. One idea is to convert the Maritime Research Center, MRC, itself into a place of environmental sustainability with good waste practices, with some action that supports biodiversity protection, climate protection, and the sustainable use of water resources. Earlier, I talked about terrestrial desert environments. The Maritime Research Center, MRC, of course, deals mostly with issues of coastal, marine, maritime and riverine ecosystems and issues. And it is very clear that the oceans affect the climate and the weather, and the weather and the climate affects what is happening on land. These things are systematically interconnected. UNESCO and MRC have plans on underwater issues and oceanographic issues, and we are already in the phase of jointly planning for some significant activities to take place this year in 2024 in Pune at MRC. Sustainability must be the new norm globally, and I hope you join us in this endeavor.
Thanks, Mehul. That was Dr. Benoboy from UNESCO India, UNESCO New Delhi office joining us. I think the biggest key takeaway from his address today was the fact that we all need to be environmental stewards, given the climate change crisis happening and other deals that we're dealing with. So I would like to thank Dr. Benoboy for sharing such a kind message with all of us. And now we'll move on to the next speaker of the evening. We have with us Mr. Joel Ruitt from the Bridge Tank with us. Dr. Joel Ruitt is the chair and the co-founder of the Bridge Tank, and he's also the member of G20 engagement groups with think tanks and businesses, T20 on climate finance and B20 on energy. I would like to call you, and you can start your presentation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I trust you can hear me clearly. It's a great honor and pleasure to be part of this webinar, and this goes without saying. It's still better to say it, but let me substantiate. It's always educative, and it's always thought-provoking. I haven't counted the number of webinars organized by the MRC to which I've been happy to be part of, but each time I deepen my understanding of the concept of underwater domain awareness, and each time I realize more how it connects to what is missing and the gaps which Commander Das was mentioning in the action. So it may be of my slow understanding, but I think it more generally calls for pedagogy, and I'm very thankful to MRC to be relentlessly conducting this pedagogy on this very important topic, which is key to the sustainability of our planet and the future of our children. Pedagogy is key in new concepts, and it's very interesting to see that we have a new concept, or at least a concept which comes from a domain in particular, which is the domain of naval security, and that percolates into ecology. I had prepared a talk for today, but based on the intervention of my dear friend Arnab Das, who mentioned that we still lack action in the international community on the UDA framework, and based on what we just heard from the UNESCO, allow me to kickstart new ideas and to kind of think aloud. You will excuse me, but to testify that your webinars are always thought-provoking and can lead to action. I would want to put a couple of points. The first point is my understanding of where we stand in the international community on climate change is that we're at a turning point. We're not just at a turning point because the degradation to environment is accelerating, but because we start understanding that all those effects are just one cycle and one element. As was said in the presentation by my predecessor from the UNESCO, climate change is not just the weather changing. It's a chain. He mentioned it's a long-term chain, but it's a long-term chain on which we have already short-term dangerous, frightening effects, but it's a long-term chain between all physical elements of the planet, including livelihood. And I think we are rediscovering that after having, I don't say if it's lost or invest in 10 years, but if you look at the Paris Agreement, or nearly a decade, if you look at the Paris Agreement was triggered on climate, was triggered because early modeling on climate change mentioned that the climate is changing. But if you look at those modeling, the physical basis of that was to model the interface between the sea and the atmosphere. And we humans have forgotten the sea in between over the last decade. This modeling has come to express the changing that we face as originating from this interface. This is how you model weather forecast and weather and climate. And all the actions, or most of the actions that have been put out of the Paris Agreement so far have started with carbon in the atmosphere, not so much thinking about oceans, about reduction of the carbon in the atmosphere, which is mitigation, and not so much the impacts and adaptation. So, there have been different agendas. No agenda has been forgotten, so to speak, But we've started, when I say we, mankind has started with the tools we had. Mankind masters energy, so we started with energy. It was easier to measure carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We started with that. It was more complex to analyze the ecosystems, and I was happy that the UNESCO mentioned about the Earth ecosystems, even though today we talk about the oceans and the UDA. But the more we understand, we have systemic thinking about the Earth ecosystems, the Earth living ecosystems, how soil is a living element, how soil is a living capital. In fact, economists tend to think that a capital is something you exhaust or resources you tap into or which you accrue, but only when it's financial capital. Soil, forest, a resilient agriculture, a resilient ocean, a dynamic, active, living ocean has, if you want to treat it as new innovative economics, for instance, has a potential of accruing natural capital. And I think that we're having this loop, this long journey, which took us away from the fundamentals of life and of ecosystems, which brings us back today to that. I'm not sure if it's the hopeful, optimistic speech on this very particular day, but I think that the journey has been long, and the fact that the workshops that MRC is conducting multiply and gain impact and audience and actions speak for itself. I would want to conclude this first reaction on which is linked to the systemic thinking, before moving to my second reaction, on quoting a book by, you will be surprised, Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman was a physics Nobel Prize. This book happens to be in French, but the original was in English, of course. This book is the book based on his teaching of physics, fundamental physics, in California University in 1962. This book is important because in 2 chapters, he explains the whole of physics in 2 chapters, including biology, including ecosystems, of course, with a snapshot, based on atoms. This very simple idea of atoms explains everything. Atoms exchange energy at the surface of water and the atmosphere. Atoms might exchange electrons or protons. When it's protons, it's acidity. Some of those elements, some atoms, some molecules, or some protons enter the cells of living organisms, and they live and prosper out of it, or they die. And what we humans, through our systems, through our economic system and technology systems do, is we have an influence on those atoms, which have an influence back on us. The very first 2 chapters by Feynman are very, very, very illuminating and can have any layperson grasp physics, the unity of the physical world in which we live in. Why am I quoting Feynman? Because I'm pretty sure that should he be doing his masterclass today, should he write his book today, he would add the environment. He would have the systemic thinking about the environment. And why am I quoting that is just to make us even more hopeful that this can work. Because sometimes when we say that everything is interconnected in the environment, we think like it's going to be horribly complex. We're in societies where we can treat problems as we've analyzed problem, put them into a silo, found the technological brick, adapted it to some social issues, and treat it in semi-silo, connecting it to some others. But we spend a lot of time in the connection. And we think that we perceive that the systemic thinking is pretty arduous. This is what physics has been doing for the last 60 years, 80 years, 100 years. So what a science which is the core of all the technological developments we have has been able to do for a century, well, the technological developments that we have can be used in a systemic thinking. And I think the key issue is education, education and education. And that's why I'm very happy to see the development that you are having, Arnab, with your center at the MRC and Niadvani, with the UNESCO. And I think it's very key to look at it in a systemic and educative manner. My second point will be shorter. Once we've understood that the issue is systemic, and until we move back to actions in the international community which are systemic, let me comment on what I see in the international community seen from the position you've been introducing me as our think tank being a member of working groups of the G20 through its engagement group with the think tank, that is the T20, and through its engagement group with the business, because we work with companies, with consultancies, that is the B20. So from this point of view, what I observe and working with some UN organization is I realize that what you were mentioning, Commodore Das, that potentially the UDA might be able to connect with the 17 SDGs, this potential is untapped. When you look at the funding mechanisms in the world, when you look at all the programs, when you look at all the studies or the origination studies, those studies to originate projects, to originate pipelines of projects, you don't have this interconnect between the SDGs, and you rarely or never see the UDA. And even in those countries which are massively having their ecosystem impacted by the proximity to the sea or to an ocean, you don't have that much. You still have the same call for tenders, you still have the same programming, you still have the same ways of funding based on what we know, which is the technologies we know, which is the funding mechanisms we know, and not so much of innovative. So as said, my second point would be shorter. I'll stop with one recommendation, which is that once you've installed your partnership with the UNESCO at the end of a very great journey, and once you've centered your partnership with UNESCO on systemic thinking and on education and on percolating your message on UDA framework into the industry and actors, then at that time, please, my recommendation is to engage with the community of funders, with the and banking and funding at large, the community of policymakers at the national level who are these days having a large part of their bandwidth absorbed with deploying all the successive steps of the Paris Agreement, which is good. The Paris Agreement has a country right NDC, nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement, then NDC implementation plan, then NDC investment plan, then NDC finance strategy. Please engage, and this is my recommendation, at MRC, engage with those countries which do that, because the UDA framework should be present at every step of this. They shouldn't do in silo, deploying the Paris Agreement, and then trying to see later how to connect with the UDA framework. And the last recommendation within this main recommendation of engaging with actors, I think that technologies which exist on the UDA, and I'm much less of an expert, so I'm speaking under your control, need to be developed. As far as I understand, the tropical waters are very unique and particular, but technology transfers from tropical areas to the rest of the world has to happen, because some of those technologies already exist. And some of these technologies that already exist, I'm sure, are not known by the large so-called global centers of the global north. I subscribe to what you said at the point, Arnab, that we should downplay this divide between the global south and the global north or whatever, because we have one global ocean, you know. But still, I would humbly put that those new developments call for understanding what happens in tropical water from the scientists who work on tropical waters based in tropical countries. And this is not new, because when we're talking about NDCs, and this is my very final point, in NDCs, when you want to measure the impact that your country will have on the planet, on the CO2 in the atmosphere, you need to address the storage capacities of your ecosystems, of your soil ecosystems. And for that, we have specific equations. We have equations that are specific to each country. The way a tempered forest absorbs carbon is not the same in the tropics. And those models we had for long, which are called pantropical models, don't work, just don't work. Because from each and every agro-ecological climatic zone, the absorbing capacity is different. So on those topics, the so-called North has started lessening on the scientific developments from the so-called South. I think for the sea and for the oceans, it ought to be the same. And you play a great role in that. You're at a great position. And it's been my honor and privilege to be able to think aloud with your friends once more. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joy. It was an honor and pleasure for all of us at MRC and everybody else who's joined us to have you here and to listen to what you had to say. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to the next speaker of the day. I would like to introduce the chief guest for today's webinar on World Environment Day. We have with us Commodore P.K. Srivastav from the Union Ministry of Earth Sciences. Mr. P.K. Srivastav is an ex-naval officer and with more than 2 decades of maritime experience. He has a doctorate from Goa University and is an international hydrographic organization qualified Cat-A hydrographer who has a vast experience in the field of surveying and oceanography. Currently, Commodore Srivastav is serving as the Scientist G at the Union Ministry of Earth Sciences. I'd like to hand over the stage to Commodore P.K. Srivastav now.
Good afternoon, Nishtha, and good afternoon, Arnab, and everyone here. Thank you for inviting me on this important World Environment Day, and good afternoon to everyone who's listening in. I have a very short talk, as Arnab has mentioned to me, what I would like to highlight during this period, and try to give you an update on something what the ministry is doing with regard to the ocean domain. Our Ministry of Earth Sciences actually is derived from the erstwhile Department of Ocean Development in India, which was founded sometime in the 1980s. And the ministry was recently founded or amalgamated from various other organizations of the Government of India in 2006 and 7. But oceans remain a very key aspect of our ministry. And the ministry also is playing right now a very vital and role in enhancing ocean domain awareness in India by collecting and analyzing oceanographic data, developing early warning systems, supporting ocean research and deep sea exploration. Also, the ministry is involved in capacity building and research vessels development. So there's a whole gamut of activities which the ministry is doing in the ocean domain. And these activities we are doing through our institutions which are involved in the development of ocean technologies, which is the National Institute of Ocean Technology in Chennai, which is closely related with our MRC center, where Arnab has been advocating a very strong collaborative approach on UDA with NIOT. Also, we are working in the field of marine biodiversity through our center in Kochi, the Center for Marine Living Resources and Ecology. We have a center which works on the coastal research on shoreline changes, on marine water pollution activities, that is the National Center for Coastal Research. And that center is now also gearing up to handle marine spatial planning activities, which was alluded to by Arnab in his initial talk. So we are also trying to work out some kind of a collaborative approach in this field through MRC and the ministry's center. We also have a very important center at Hyderabad, that is the INCOIS, the National Center for Ocean Information Services, which is dealing with all kind of ocean services, the potential fishing zone advisories, the ocean state forecast, the oil spill advisories, the heat wave alerts, and now we have recently started a bulletin on La Nina and El Nino bulletins on a monthly basis. Just thought I will give you an update of what the ministry and the institutions are doing and how the ministry's ocean development paradigm has now been amalgamated into the ministry's role. Also, at this juncture, I would like to also highlight to our audience here that an important mission which the ministry had launched a couple of years back, which is called the Deep Ocean Mission. And the Deep Ocean Mission is very critically aligned with the underwater domain awareness campaign, which we have been discussing today. As the Deep Ocean Mission is targeted towards exploring and mapping the deep ocean floor and finding out the ocean resources in the deep ocean, specifically the polymetallic nodules, which have the rare earths, the cobalt-rich crust, the hydrothermal vents, and also the deep sea biodiversity. These exploratory work is being carried out using our own research vessels and the technology which we have developed through NIOT. And the target is to find out the deep ocean environment, of which we have very little knowledge. What is there in the deep ocean beyond the coastal regions, sometimes in the deep waters more than 1,000 meters, 5,000-meter depth. What is the biological composition? What is the chemical characteristics? What are the geological structures available there? So it's a huge new area of exploration which is still not been explored properly. As they say, we know more about the surface of the moon, but very little about the deep ocean. So this is another area under the Deep Ocean Mission which the ministry is targeting and is closely aligned with the underwater domain awareness, which we are all talking about in today's webinar. For doing this exploratory work, we have also worked towards developing technologies which would be very useful in future. So the ministry is targeting to deploy a manned submersible, developing technologies for a manned submersible, a manned mission to take about 3 scientists to the 6,000-meter depth sometime by 2026. It's very similar to the Chandrayaan project of the ISRO, which we have heard about, and we call it the Matsyayan project, which is the equivalent of the Chandrayaan project. So the Deep Ocean Manned Mission is also a very critical component for underwater domain awareness. And I would not like to dwell more deep into the blue economy aspects here due to paucity of time, whereas there are a large number of gamut of activities which the ministry has been doing under the blue economy framework, trying to amalgamate the different sectors of the blue economy, whether it be fisheries, whether it be shipping, the tourism, or the coastal and marine spatial planning, which are all to be integrated into a holistic approach so that we are able to sustainably exploit the ocean resources while keeping the health of the oceans and the livelihoods of the coastal communities in focus. Another area which I would like to highlight at this juncture would be the role and the aspect of leveraging of various international treaties on the oceans, which are available, for which not only the ministry but many other ministries and departments are signatories on behalf of Government of India. These could be the UNCLOS Treaty, the CBD Treaty, the Antarctic Treaty Commission, which ministry is handling, the CAMLA Treaty, the BBNJ Treaty, which is coming up now. So we are gearing up for signing and ratification of those. So these treaties are already in existence, where different nations, different countries are gearing up for, to the best of their capabilities, to meet the implications. So if we are able to leverage the existing treaties for better management of the ocean space, better understanding of the ocean space, and develop conservation activities, that would be a key message which I would like to say we can take forward on this important day, the Environment Day here. So as we are here today gathered to raise awareness about the environment, while promoting different actions through our own means or advocating policy change, educating the public, which we have been doing, and through MRC, they are taking up this lead. I wish you all the best, and thank you very much, Arnab, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing insights from the ministry then, and also highlighting about the deep ocean mission that the Government of India is undertaking currently. Thanks a lot. Next, we move on to the next segment. It is called as the intervention by the experts. Today we have with us Mr. Thibault Fernol, and we also have Dr. Swayam Prabha Das, who has joined us from. She is the Associate Vice President and Lead of the Policy and Planning and Development Alternatives in New Delhi. We also have the Research Fellow, Mr. Thibault, who has joined us. But first, I'd like to call upon Dr. Swayam Prabha Das to come in and share her comments with all of us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to celebrate the World Environment Day with you all. And oceans is very close to my heart, and Arnab knows that, so he always puts me in a spot on that. But thank you, Arnab. I really love this opportunity to be talking about oceans every day and every day of my life. So I would just like to bring us to the fact that the theme for the World Oceans Day is land restoration, the World Environment Day is land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. And if I may add here that the land and oceans interaction is all well known to us, be it the monsoon systems that impacts all of us, it's the water cycle systems, is the El Nino and La Nina that we talk about. So land and water is very closely connected. So if we are talking about the oceans, we are also talking about the other ecosystems that's interconnected. And as Joel Ruth has already spoken about, it's the whole systems and the ecosystem approach. So we cannot talk about the oceans and the land in isolation when we are talking about the whole planetary crisis that we are into, which actually is all about climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. So they're all interconnected. So once they're interconnected, so the land and the ocean interconnect is even more strengthened. So today, when we talk about oceans, when we talk about underwater domain, we should also remember that there are forests, there's also land, there's the seabed that we are trying to know more about. And also, as Kamoto Pika Srivastava said, that the deep oceans we are mapping, and I think almost 90% of the sea flow has been mapped by now by various agencies globally, and that's a way forward to going. But we are also seeing that the biodiversity that we know underwater is very little that we know of, actually. And there's a lot more to discover and a lot more to know. And while we are sitting in the decade of ecosystem restoration, probably we should look at the sea floor restorations and how we can also protect the underwater domain from various stresses and various pollutions. One of them was the noise pollution, which Arnab so clearly mentioned. And how can we mitigate that? How can we reduce the impacts of the underwater domain and the pollutions and the impacts that the organisms, the big creatures, the big mammals, the sharks and the fishes, and it impacts us all through the food system, through our biomedical explorations that we are looking at the prospecting. So it's all interconnected. And if I may say that the UNESCO recently launched the State of the Ocean Report 2024, and it has actually noted that the rate of the ocean warming has doubled in the last 20 years. The rate of the sea level rise has doubled in the last 30 years. So once this happens, then we are also going to lose our coastal land to the sea level rise. So we will have erosions. We will be losing our island systems, which are low-lying areas. So there is a lot of interactions between the oceans and the land that we're going to see. And it's going to impact the biodiversity both in the marine ecosystem and the land ecosystem. When I talk about coastal land degradation, it could be through ingress of salt water, it could be through aquaculture practices that we are doing. Losing our coastal agricultural land to aquaculture has been noticed in many areas, and that whole salinization has actually led to a loss of livelihoods. And it has been noted that only through nature-based solutions, through ecosystem-based approach, do we see those solutions coming up, those innovative approaches coming up where we can protect our coasts, where we can protect our livelihoods, and we can protect the people and build resilience of the communities. And here, mangrove plantations, protecting our corals, seagrass beds, seaweeds is one of the main factors which comes within the nature-based solutions, and many projects are actually linked to all of these as we see around us. The World Oceans Day, which is coming up on the 8th, is called Waves of Change. That the theme is the Waves of Change, collective action for the ocean. And I think the entire theme is what we have been talking about, and what are the actions that we need to take so as we can safeguard not just our marine ecosystem, our coastal ecosystems, as well as the lives and livelihoods that's dependent on it. And Commodore P.K. Srivastava very nicely had enunciated all the work that the ministry has been doing through its various agencies. And if you look at that, it's a whole gamut of things, and all these agencies are very specialized agencies. And each of them are very focused on technology, on communicating, creating awareness, documenting, looking at what are the research that's happening. So through all of them, we have this opportunity to accelerate actions on the ground and also at the international policy level. So like Commodore Srivastava spoke about BBNJ, we also have the plastics treaty that's under discussions, and that is going to have a huge impact on the underwater domain and the oceans and the marine and the coastal ecosystems, as impactful as it would be on the land. So whatever the runoffs that we have from the land, it ends up in the oceans. So plastic that we have seen, the pollution that flows, the ocean-based pollution of the plastic, it flows from the land through the rivers, through the canals, through the channels into our oceans. And that impacts our ecosystems, our livelihoods. So this treaty is going to be a very important treaty. The discussions are on for it to be either is it going to be legally binding or non-binding, and that's going to be one major point of discussions. The other point of discussion would be essentially on the financing of these kind of treaties. We also have the Cumin Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which is again under the CBD, and that again has a very drastic implications for our marine ecosystem, which is the 30 by 30. How do you protect your oceans? So the 30 by 30, the whole through marine spatial planning, how do you enhance your protections of the marine ecosystem? So on the policy front, there are numerous policies that's coming up, that's under discussions, that's under negotiations. And BBNJ, as Commodore Srivastava said, is now up to us for, endorsing it, signing it off for ratification. So there are these opportunities where we can accelerate action, where we can contribute towards more research, a lot of research. We probably know more of the universe than we know of the oceans. So probably what MRC is doing is really, really commendable, and hats off to all of you for picking up this topic and trying to bring in more of knowledge to all of us. And that's what I think the young leadership going forward needs to do more. Like take on the task of more research, more explorations of the underwater domain, and more knowledge sharing is what we need. And that's what we do on these occasions. And we need to do that more often. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swayamprabha Das, for joining us today on a very special occasion of World Environment Day. Thanks for your intervention. We also had Mr. Thibault with us to share the intervention, but I think because of connectivity issues, he couldn't be able to stay afloat. So now I would move on to the next speaker. We have with us Mr. Ashwin Shroff, from the Excel Industries. He is the chairman and board of directors of the Excel Industries. And I would like to call upon him to share his views now.
Well, at the outset, hello everyone. Good evening. Maybe there are some people who were trying to say good morning or good afternoon, but let's say, wishing all of you on this wonderful day. It has been very nice hearing all the experts on the very important day that we have today. And I must thank Dr. Das for bringing the awareness about the awareness need continuously to all of us. Very slow, gentle, but continuous sort of bell ringing in our ear that you don't forget this. So thank you very much for inviting us. I have my 3 colleagues who are involved in our seaweed related activities, whose basic focus is the blue economy and also the climate change. As we all know, the global warming, climate change, whatever we say, is all caused by we humans using too much of fossil fuels, sending too much CO2 into the atmosphere and the ocean. And it needs to be removed. And we also need to change our lifestyle so that we don't stop, we stop generating more carbon dioxide and sending it. But anyway, whatever is there needs to be pulled out. So that has been our focus area. I am happy to introduce my 3 colleagues who are there, all involved in the full time on the seaweed activity. And as I said, it is done with both the objectives of doing something about the climate change and also creating a blue economy. It's a wonderful resource, and we are happy that we are doing this. In India, unfortunately, we have not done much, and though a lot of research has been done. So we are trying to convert that research into workable economic solution for a large scale. We are catalysts for doing that. So thank you again, Dr. Das, for bringing the wonderful people together. It is always a pleasure to meet both very veterans in the field and also youngsters. So thank you very much. Just end with one quote, I believe yesterday or day before, the UN Secretary General has given, that the era of global warming is now over. We have entered the era of boiling and not warming. So from warming, we are going to boiling. The Mumbai walas have been experiencing the warming in a very, very intense manner. I'm sure Dr. Das, you in Pune must be experiencing equally and all over the world. So I think we need to very, very urgently attend to this. And at the same time, the unexploited resource which the oceans, the 75% of the earth offers, we need to bring it to in a sustainable economic model, not just exploitative. So that is one thing we do. India has a great role to play in various ways, including the climate change. I think the kind of effort that we are making through seaweed growing, India's long coastline, and of course all our sort of exclusive economic zone put together, we have a great opportunity. The other great opportunity that the oceans, thanks to people like Dr. Das, that the world is discovering, that under the ocean there are so many resources, including the critical minerals that we are talking about, are all available in a highly concentrated form. So we need to work together in a collaborative manner to realizing many of these so that we are, while we grow, while we make economic development, but we do it in a sustainable, responsible manner. I think that's the effort that Dr. Das has been continuously doing. We are happy to be associated with him and MRC, and we will be continuing to do that. So thank you very much. Just quickly introduce my colleagues, Dr. Jay Kumar on the left, marine biologist, Dr. Mukesh Sharma. He has been working with CSMCRA earlier, so extraction of various things from seaweed. And Viraj, who is helping to create our digital network so that we can connect all the people who are involved in the seaweed space. And of course, we have many other colleagues, so this is just a few of them. Yeah. So, thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashwin. Thank you also for introducing to the people. And Excel Industry has always been a supporter of the cause of underwater domain awareness. So thank you so much for your kind words, sir. Next, moving on, it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce you to the next speaker. I'd like to welcome Ambassador Anup Kumar Mudgal, sir. He's a former diplomat. He is the member of the FICCI's Blue Economy Task Force, and he's the former member of the steering committee under the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Committee on Blue Economy. So I'd like to welcome him. Welcome, sir, and we are happy to have you, and we look forward to your speech today.
Thank you so much, Nishtha. Parnabit is all with a wonderful experience coming for your meetings and listening to a wide variety of views on environmental issues, ocean issues. You know, whenever I come for this conference or such conferences, I go back with a mixed feeling of fear and hope. Fear because every time we say we are doing something, we realize we are not doing enough, right? And every time we also realize that the tools available to us in addressing these problems are improving. So while the fear of inadequacy of our action, but the hope of our capacity of dealing with these problems enhancing with time. You know, we have been kind of marking a World Environment Day since 1974, and each time we come up with a theme. Now, if you go through the list of themes since the early days, I think there is hardly any theme that we have not touched. But still, the state of the environment is every day worse than yesterday. Now, you know, we have to really, when we talk of something, we can talk big because it doesn't cost anything to talk big. But where is the follow-up? We don't fail in talking. We fail in implementation and follow-up. Now, you talk about land degradation, forest degradation, water degradation, air degradation. We talk so much, but every day, these resources suffer more damage. And we see we are worse off. Which means, where is the problem? Why it's happening? When we're talking so much, maybe we are also doing so much, but then why we don't see the consequences, the improvement as we desire to see? You know, Arnab, you know, I am not only a diplomat, but also come from science background related to environmental issues. You what I see, Arnab, environment, because sometimes we talk about environment as if we are not part of it. We lecture on environment. We are part of it, for God's sake. So we have to behave as a part of the environment ecosystem, not really as if we are lecturing the ecosystem or the environment. My observation, Arnav, is that humans have interacted with environment ever since the species arose. And this dialogue with the environment, in fact, Govind mentioned that, the traditional people were able to address the environment better. Why? Because the dynamics of the dialogue with the environment was much better. They were not living off the environment, but they were living within the environment. Now, when you directly see the consequences of your action, you are more careful about the damage that you are causing. Today, the problem is that because we have been disconnected from the consequences of our action. A company may be headquartered somewhere in a big international global city, but their operations may be far off. They may be doing deforestation, they may be doing damage to the land, they may be damaging the water, but these people have no idea what they're doing. So we have been removed from that guilt that we are damaging the environment because of our actions. Therefore, there is a need to connect those who are causing damage to the damage itself. Let them live with that damage from close proximity rather than from remote places. This is out of sight, out of mind. Now, that approach will not work. I think we must put emphasis on the stakeholders that please go and live the consequences of what you're doing. You can't live in the most comfortable places and carry on your operations in the most miserable places. That is where the problem is. Because they don't see the misery, in fact, they're causing. And as a result, they feel immune to taking corrective action. This is one point. And the other point is that environment is a partner who is not so talkative. It doesn't talk back. When we make it suffer, it keeps suffering. And it doesn't immediately hit back to say that, sorry, you are damaging me. And our inability to understand, because we don't understand the language of the environment. And as a result, when it keeps suffering, we don't realize in time that the environment is suffering. Because this language is so complex and so subtle that we do not have the means of understanding those signals in time. The third point, we live on land, but we are immensely impacted by the oceans. Now again, we never thought that, it is the ocean which is regulating our environment. We thought, oh no problem. We can plant a few trees here and there. We can clean a river here and there. And we can transfer a factory from one place to the other and probably we'll solve it. We need to understand the environment with a 360-degree understanding of the ecosystems. Most of the land ecosystems are very closely impacted by oceans. I would not go into all the technical details because everybody listening today, they know what I'm saying. So while on land, as I say, because we see the impact of what we are doing, at least we try to do something. But in ocean, it's a far off place. It's a far remote place. And we don't simply care. You know, we have to understand that the totality of the environment is our home. It cannot damage our home for immediate short-term returns. And this is where my next point, Arnab. Now, why do we cause this damage to the environment? It is because of the growing consumption. You know, people must understand that the land or the earth is a supplier. And we, as one of the millions of species, are the biggest consumer of those resources. Now, if the supplier runs out of supplies and we still keep consuming, we are definitely going to damage the supplier. So here the child is hurting the mother because the child doesn't know the mother's capacity and every day wants to exceed that because the child wants to become bigger. So it's a pity that we measure our growth by growth of consumption. Pure numerical consumption, quantitative consumption, more power, more energy, more transport, bigger housing, more roads and everything more. Without realizing why do we need more every day? So this whole concept of, as I always in the earlier talks talk about, good life. For God's sake, good life is not synonymous of higher consumption. It should be a synonymous of quality consumption. Can we pay attention to quality of our consumption? Which means, all right, I am not against good life. But can the good life come at lesser expense to the environment? Now that is where, Karnam, I go back every time I come for these conferences with a certain degree of hope. I always say we have to reduce and immensely reduce the resource intensity of our growth. And it can happen. It might have been difficult in the past, but today with technology, it is possible. We can cut down our resource intensity through circular production, circular methods, by better conservation, and much more than that, and I'm coming to UDA. When you say UDA, I would say, why not even on the land, a counterpart of UDA? Which means understanding well in time the language of Mother Earth. So that we could approach the whole problem from prevention rather than cure. There is no point throwing more plastic and then developing technology to recover it. There is no point throwing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and then developing technology to recover it. It's a strange idea. You remember one of the participants in our conferences when he said, you know, the best solution to plastic pollution is please don't throw it. Can you not stop from causing damage rather than recovering from damage? It is easy to fell a tree. And then we say, no, let's plant 10 more. Now, why should you count on planting 10 more? Why can't we not stop felling those trees in the first place? Or overfishing. And then we say, oh my God, the species has disappeared. Of course, the species will disappear. Then we overfish. And then we cry, we shed all kinds of tears. Oh my God, the biodiversity is disappearing. It will disappear. Biodiversity is disappearing because of us. Yes. And we are not paying attention to that. And then once we do it, then we say, oh no, can we find some technology to get their species back, which has disappeared? I think we need to change our attitudes. Arnab, that is where UDA is, in my view, a great hope in understanding the very subtle language of the environment. You see, when we do something in the ocean, because UDA is ocean, so I will talk about ocean. When we do something in ocean, something happens to the ocean, right? And that is what we don't understand. Our problem is that we talk on behalf of ourselves, and then we also talk on behalf of the environment, without understanding the language of the environment. Can we go to the ocean before we do anything, or when we do anything? Can we study its impact on the environment? It could be a chemical impact, it could be a physical impact, it could be a biological impact, it could be a social impact, it could be any impact. Can we see that impact right in the beginning? Because by the time you hear the crying voice of the environment, believe me, the damage has already been done. Right? We need to catch the problem at the beginning, not at the end of the cycle. Then it becomes very difficult to resolve it. Yes? So, my hope, Arnab, is that UDA is not only an excellent idea, but it is also attracting excellent minds. Those minds who are much better prepared in understanding and interpreting the language of the environment and caution us well in advance where to stop or change or amend. Yes. So I can go on, but I'm sure you have limited time for me. I want to congratulate Erna because very few people have paid attention to this. You have taken the initiative not only to talk on behalf of the environment, but also understand the environment and then talk on behalf of the environment. We are all talking on behalf of environment without understanding it. So the time has come when we start dirtying our own hands, getting into that environment, living with it, capturing its suffering or happiness well in time, and make sure that we do not cause the damage in the first place, rather than crying later on how to recover from the damage. Thank you very much. I am again going back with great hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Muttal, sir. It's always a pleasure listening to you. Every time we listen to you, we always take back something which is very impactful. Thanks again for joining us. Now we'll move on to the concluding segment. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, all the speakers who were there with us. And before I move on and I let Arnab sir take over and do the vote of thanks, I'd like to inform you all about the upcoming webinar that we have on 8th of June on the occasion of World Oceans Day. That webinar is going to start from 4 p.m. onwards as well. And we'll have our interns, the interns from IIT Bombay and IIT Kharagpur and IIT Madras to do the presentation. And we'll also have the internal team from MRC that's going to do the presentations on the same day. So the floor is open and we'd like to invite you all for the same. I'd now call Dr. Commander Arnab Das to take over and do the vote of the order. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishtha. Just to reiterate, the event on 8th of June, the World Ocean Day, it will be a multidisciplinary presentation by some of the young minds, and you all know we focus on the multidisciplinary work, and so you will get to see presentations by all our interns. And we are happy to say that a lot of these young people have taken a lot of interest, particularly from these top premier institutes. We get a whole lot of applications for internship, and some of them also continue with us as fellows and contribute to the body of work that we have been generating. So we do request you to join us on the 8th for this. Now coming to the vote of thanks, I must first thank all the speakers. I mean, the diversity was well on display, starting with Mr. Ganesh Natarajan sir, who comes from a very deep industry understanding, and he is well traveled, and he has been now focusing on sustainability and climate change. He is part of multiple boards, and he's been part of CSR support for various very big organizations, and he's been a champion on sustainability and climate change, and he had his views. Unfortunately, some part of it we couldn't hear, but we will definitely take another opportunity to reach out to him and make sure that we get his views in more clarity. But I would still like to thank him. In spite of his very busy schedule, he agreed to be part of this, and he's been again a friend of MRC and has been interacting with us and giving us a lot of inputs. Next, I would like to thank my friend from Paris, Dr. Joel Rouet. As he also mentioned, we do the bridge tank, and they are very much focused on these kind of issues, environment, climate change, and global strategy on such issues. And Joel himself is very well traveled, and he is part of many organizations, and I think you can always see the reflection in the way he spoke today, and really articulated the priority areas. My friend Dr. Benno Boyer from UNESCO, of course, UNESCO and MRC has been now working together, and we have bigger plans to contribute at a global level. And Benno has been a big supporter of our work, and he has been making bigger plans, and we are very happy to be part of that initiative, and we really want to thank him for joining us today. Then my senior from the Navy, P.K. Srivastav sir, is now a very senior scientist in Ministry of Earth Sciences and handling some very, very critical projects there and critical initiatives. And sir, thank you very much. You gave us a very good perspective on how the Government of India is looking at the ocean and how the bigger initiatives are being driven. And of course, your ministry has been very much at the forefront, and we are happy to be working with you. We have an MOU with your with INCOIS, and also working closely with NIOT. And now, thanks to your initiative, we are now interacting with NCCR. And I think each one of these organizations are doing some very stellar work, and we as a organization can definitely complement what they're doing. Then I would also mention my friend Dr. Swayam Prabha Das, and she always articulates her thoughts very, very well, and the importance that she gives to the oceans and to the underwater domain is something we really appreciate. And she has a background in these subjects. She has been very actively involved with IUCN, and she understands where the world is headed. And now she's in another very, very important organization. Earlier, she was contributing. She was part of the G20 core team. So she has seen it up close, and she really understands what the priorities are for the global community. And she understands from both the sides. I mean, the accuser and the accused. So if I can say so. So thank you, Swam Prabha, for joining us. Thibault could not join today because of some technical issues. His connectivity was a big problem. I would like to mention Ashwin sir and thank him and his team for joining us. He has been a very, very a big supporter of MRC and the initiative in every way. He has been guiding us also, and his organization, in spite of being such a big corporate house, but their focus on environment has been very, very unique. And as part of their CSR activity, they have taken the seaweed aspect very, very seriously. And Sir himself has been playing a leadership role in India and also in the region. So Ashwin sir, thank you so much, and we really appreciate your continued support to our efforts. Now coming to Mudgal sir, I mean, you could, I think, very clearly see the subtle humor, but the messaging has been very, very strong. And sir, I mean, MRC has been extremely fortunate to get your guidance right from the beginning. And all of you definitely know that sir has been part of uh, the Sagar Vision announcement, and he was India's ambassador to Mauritius when the Honorable Prime Minister went and announced the Sagar Vision. I mean, the Sagar Vision itself sums up the importance of UDA. And sir, with his background and his, I mean, you can also see the passion in the way he speaks. So I have been singularly lucky because whenever sir and me sit, the conversation cannot end before 2 hours at least. And the kind of inputs I get, and it has really helped us in shaping our UDA initiative on multiple levels. And you talked about the 360 aspect and the language. So definitely we are trying, and as you can see, it's a multidisciplinary framework. And the young people, and I mean, the strength of the appreciation that we are getting today is the back end work that our team is doing. I mean, one is our core team led by Sridhar Prabhuraman, who's the deputy director, but he's supported by some very young and energetic engineers and the interns who come. I mean, the number of applications that we're getting is growing, and without any advertisement. So I think the young people understand the importance. They are as passionate as you and me on this, but I think they need to be given some direction and some guidance, and MRC is committed to doing that. So thank you so much, and as always, you have been, I mean, I've never heard a no for an answer whenever we have. And I would request all of you to consider, if you are available, please join us on 8th, because that's when we are trying to, I mean, there I will not be speaking, I assure you, and my team will be presenting the work, and you will see the diversity. And even for me, it has been a great learning, because when we started, what I thought and what I've learned in the last 7 years is remarkable. I mean, I probably have another 20 years before that of having handled underwater. But when we started doing some serious work as an organization, we realized how big this is, how deep it is, and how much multidisciplinary effort is required. I mean, we fall short every time, and but we are extremely lucky that we get the support from the best people around. So thank you all for joining us. If anybody wants to have a last word, we have time. I mean, another 5 minutes we can extend. So anybody, please feel free to speak. Yeah, Dr. Swamprabha, please go ahead.
Thank you. And I really thank everyone here. It's been such a great experience, and listening to Anup sir is always such a pleasure. I agree with you totally. It's been such a pleasure listening to you. But Arnab, I feel, every time I come to your platform, I always learn, and I can never say no to you. You know that very well. And I think when we talk about oceans, we need to talk, like you rightly said, more from a multidisciplinary point of view. But we should also learn how we are connecting actions on the ground to what we're saying at the policy level. That connect, if we can build it strongly, that would benefit. Because policies influence the work on the ground, the work on the ground should also influence the policies back. So it's a loop. So if we talk about policies in isolation, it won't help. If you talk about the implementation work on the ground, it won't help. And this I have learned over my years, that conservation and policy, implementation and policy go hand in hand. So I wanted to emphasize this because on 8th, the students and experts are again going to gather and talk about it. So probably that's a food for thought. So that's one thing. And the second thing I want to say is, how do you communicate change? We don't communicate that often. So if you see any change, so it's everything is not bad. Sorry, Anup sir, but everything is not bad. So we do something good also. So probably when we're talking about the stresses, the pressures on the ecosystem, we should also try and see what are the case studies or the good practices that is helping restoration of the ecosystems, or what are the practices that communities are undertaking, and how do you document that? That could be a traditional knowledge. That could be something which is wired into our fishermen, into our seafarers. How do you bring that together? And probably it's time when we need to pause, step back, and see how they reacted to certain changes. The changes are very drastic, but those certain changes or certain nuances that we can gather from the people, from the communities who are directly living there, are impacted, is very important for researchers like you, me, policymakers. So how do you bring that together? So I think this is what is a missing link. So with DA, I'm here now with DA, and I would really like to explore this bit on how do you document and bring this traditional knowledge, and how do you build this policy and practice connect? So if there's an opportunity with any of us, with all of us here, I would like to explore that bit. So I'll stop.
Certainly, Dr. Swayamprabha Das. In fact, yes, I'll just add one point and then I'll hand over to you. My colleague Catherine, she has been largely looking at documentation. She's working under the guidance of Anup sir to exactly map what you said. So there are multiple documentation that we work on, but Catherine has been now working with Anup sir on specific things. I think, sir, I would request you to elaborate more on that.
I thought first I will tell Swamprabha. You see, that is why I said a mix of fear and hope. Yes. If you do not recognize fear, then the hope may be exaggerated. And believe me, we have exaggerated hope all the time. Yes. And as a result, by the time we realized the importance of fear, it was probably too late. Swamprabha, in fact, as a diplomat, we deal with conflict avoidance and conflict resolution.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Tell me how many people are rewarded for conflict avoidance? Very few. And how many people are rewarded for conflict resolution?
Many.
So we need to put premium on conflict avoidance so that we do not cause a conflict. And then don't take credit for solving a conflict. If you can't avoid a conflict and allow a conflict to take place, then we have no right to claim the credit for resolving a conflict. So this is my issue. I want to put premium on conflict avoidance. Environmental degradation is part of that conflict. And that is where UDA is important, because it can help you avoid that conflict in the first place. Rather than building specialized high-tech ships to recover plastic from the ocean, rather than not throwing the plastic into the ocean in the first place. Who will be rewarded for not throwing plastic into the ocean? No one. Who will get rewarded? Those who go with high tech to collect the same plastic back. So we have to change our way of thinking, Swamprabha.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
I agree.
And that is what Arnab is mentioning when we talk about MSP, marine spatial planning.
Yeah.
The whole idea there is to avoid a conflict. You know, we are all trying to get better life. And for that, we need resources. But can we minimize the conflict when we expect or harness those resources? When we go for harnessing of those resources, it doesn't have to be a conflict. It can be a symbiotic relationship where the giver suffers because the taker is too greedy. See, simple things like when Mahatma Gandhi said, Earth has enough for everybody's need. Earth cannot feed your greed. No, we have to go back to the basics. And no, we are so busy with cliches that we are forgetting the basics of life. Yes, we call the earth mother, but we mistreat it every day. You know, can you reconcile these two things? At one point, we are lying at least, either when we call it a mother or when we mistreat it. Yes. So my issue is this, that we are so fond of finding complicated solutions to simple problems. Because that is what we recognize. When a solution is complicated, everybody recognizes. Give a simple solution, nobody pays attention. Yes, it has to be cutting edge, high tech. Why? Our relationship with the environment is not high tech. Yes. So I hope I've explained my viewpoint. It is not pessimism, but it is realism.
Absolutely. Anab, can I just come in for 1 minute if you don't mind? I'm sorry, this is such an engaging conversation.
Sure.
I can't stop myself. We should actually also, taking from what Anup sir just said, probably, the whole well-being and our connect with the oceans, I think we are missing that somewhere. And once we get that, then we'll probably, what Anup sir is saying, that why do you even create a problem, that you have to then find a solution. So once you start connecting with the oceans, the whole well-being will drive itself. The whole cultural connect will drive by itself. So I think probably that's another thing that we should look at. And that is where you would also avoid your conflict. You would avoid throwing garbage because you start building that whole relationship with the oceans from a different point of view. It's not an exploitative point of view, but it's a more integrated, a more well-being perspective. So probably that's what I think Dr. Joel Rich was trying to say, that, when you talk about a systems approach, and we are all part of the ecosystem as well, right? So that thing is missing. And once we start stressing that, then probably the human and oceans connect will be more strong. And the oceans literacy, the kind of oceans work that is happening globally is actually focusing on that, rebuilding the connect of humans of people back to the oceans. We may be living in Delhi, but today I cannot say that I'm not connected to the oceans. So we need to strengthen those linkages properly. So thank you so much. I'll start.
So thank you very much. I think I must thank Nishtha for conducting this webinar in a very effective manner. And thank you all for joining us, and our interns and fellows who are there and our internal team. Thank you very much for making it happen. Thank you so much. Anupsa, thank you so much. Dr. Swayam Prabha, thank you so much.